All right, again, how you doing, YouTube? I'm back with another freedom video. How you free in Christ? So I was gonna go into keep going into Galatians, but God took me a different way, and so now I have a couple things prepared. And so yeah, let's get into it. All right. So I mean, continuing on in Galatians. Uh, well, uh, what we learn from Galatians 3 is that the promises don't matter. Like, the promises matter because the promises are by promise, not by law, because the promise was given first before the law. You know what I'm saying? So we get the promise regardless, but only those who are saved. Okay? Only Israel that is saved, and then eventually the Gentiles get the promise. That aside, why grace is more important than the law. And Galatians 2:21, I do not set aside the grace of God, for if righteousness could be gained through the law, Christ died for nothing. So that's the New International Version. We can go to let's see, King James. And the King James is, I do not frustrate the grace of God, for if righteousness came by the law, then Christ died in vain. So some people like to go for the original or the older ones. So yeah, gave out both. But that means right there that the law was never going to save you. The law was only there to protect you because you were the God's chosen. When Jesus died, he took that for you, so you don't have to worry about no type of law or none of that. It's freedom, but it's not. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're free to do anything. You know, there's still some Old Testament laws that still apply, but love is the greatest commandment. If you love God with all your heart, you'll want to do what God says. If you love your neighbor with all your heart, you'll never want to harm them. So you fill out the commandments through that grace. You don't have to be so rigid in your worship. You know what I'm saying? And so these Levitical practices and all these things, they're annulled. They're disavowed because we're not under the laws of sin and death when we're in Christ. If you have not accepted Christ, then you're racking up sin. So you still technically are kind of under the law, but you still have grace in that. So Galatians, and then Galatians really speaks on this. If you want to go over to Galatians 5 and 4, it says, you who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen away from grace. The whole thing that Christ gave his life for you to live in that grace. And if you don't want to do that, I mean, like, it's kind of a big sacrifice so you can live in freedom to do things greater than him. You know what I'm saying? That's what he wanted us to do. You know what I'm saying? He paved the way for us to do greater things. And for that, you know, we couldn't be under that law because we couldn't be relatable to our brothers and sisters of other nations. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how it worked. God had to make himself relatable to us, and then he came in us, you know, in our people, and then he was supposed to teach us how to be like him. Once he died, the revelation was supposed to go around, and we were supposed to teach the other nations. We did that for a while, but it really didn't catch on, and we kept going back to the law. We kept going back into slavery, back into bondage, into the Old Testament ways, because we didn't want to accept the New Testament teachings. And so that really affected us, and that's why we were like so downtrodden, you know, for the last couple hundred years. You know what I'm saying? And but we had to forget ourselves so that they could see themselves in the Bible. So it all worked out. God doesn't make plans for no reason. So when they found themselves, because at first we were teaching, but it would get corrupt. Just like, churches get corrupt today. You have people wanting to teach doctrines and commandments of men. Things get turned from the Bible and turned from the spirit of the law into like what tradition dictates. Tradition is gonna get you messed up, because when you keep preaching like we're the greatest people in the world, saying we did this and we did that. If you really read this book, we sucked. You know what I'm saying? Like the Israelites sucked, and it was a couple great ones and it was a couple bad ones. But if you look at it in a different perspective, we're no different than anybody else. Any other nation, we're no different than them. It's just that we were just chosen. How God chooses you before you ever chose him, and that's in the work of salvation. So like people die without salvation, but sometimes God will just grab you and just be like, no, you're mine and you're gonna work for me. You ain't going to hell. I'm saving you. Like sometimes God will do that. And so that's what he did for us. He was like, nope, I'm picking these people and I'm gonna show myself through these people. And so the law and traditions, it doesn't equate well in the New Testament. See, if you go to 1 Timothy, 1 Timothy 4:4, for everything God created is good, and nothing is to be rejected. It is received in thanksgiving. There's different versions of that, but all in all, like you these commandments and these laws, like you need the Spirit. I know it's going to be really hard, because I was under the law for a little bit. I was under the law for a couple months, and God was like, nah, you ain't about that life. I got to get you out of that so you can help other people be free. So you can only, when you are an heir, you are free. When you are a child or you are a servant, you are in bondage. You gotta take hold of your own freedom, of your own deliverance. If I didn't read the Bible, I wouldn't have got delivered from a lot of things. I had to take advantage of, I had to put it in my own hands sometimes, and Jesus is right there when I read that book to deliver me from this. And that's how I got delivered from the law. I had to read the Bible. I was in a car accident. I went to the hospital. It opened me up on this page. It opened me on the exact page of Galatians, around Galatians 5. And that's what it told me that. And I was like, no, it was like, at first, I wanted to follow the law because I didn't want to harm, I didn't want to be viewed as messed up in God's eyes. And every time I did something wrong, I just felt so much shame, and like I was going through like bouts of depression because I could never get anything right, and it was like, why am I, just trying so hard, but it's like, it's impossible. God, I live in the society I live in, this pork and everything, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't help anything. When I got into the car accident, I was just so depressed and overwhelmed with everything. It was because I was under the law, and when I was in that and I had to go stay in the hospital for a couple days, I opened that book, that fell on the page. It was like, well, you're trying to not anger God and try to be right in his eyes. You are frustrating the grace of God. It told me that. It was like, you're frustrating God because you won't even use his grace. I was like, it just dawned on me. It was like, what? I'm making him madder, or frustrating him. It's worse to not accept the grace than to be under, than to be, it's worse to accept the grace. To not accept the grace than to accept the grace. So that was just a freeing event. Tongue twisted on that one. So these Sabbath days, all of this, when God said, I'm put it in your heart, he put it in your heart. And that's the Spirit, but the blood freed you. So now you can live through the Spirit to enact what is graceful, what God knows your heart really desires, because he knows it. So if you're doing something out of pride, then you're doing something out of pride, and he can understand that. But like Colossians, right? I'm in Colossians 2 to keep it going. So then, just as you receive Jesus Christ as your Lord, continue to live lives in him, rooted in him, built up and strengthened in him as faith as you were taught, and overflowing with thankfulness. You got to stay in the revelation of Christ. Now I'm gonna skip a little bit, right? Because it's gonna say about don't be like, see to it that no one takes you captive, though hollow and deceptive philosophies, which depends on human traditions and elemental spiritual forces of this world rather than Christ. So you gotta, if I go down to 12, having been buried with him in baptism, in which you are also raised with him through the faith of the working of God, who raiseth him from the dead. So when you get baptized, you are raised back with him. Like when you die, like it says in the New Testament, when you die, it made the parallel, when a woman dies, is she still under the law of that, or under the rule of that husband? No, that first husband is dead. Now she's brought back to life. God has brought you back to life when you get born again. That law doesn't matter, because you died with that law. Now you're in the new law. You're resurrected with Christ into a new state, because you are a new being. You're a new creature. Old creatures don't look the same as new creatures. You think different. You got a different heart. You got a different spirit. So you don't have. So the Sabbath is whatever day you got available. You know what I'm saying? The Sabbath could be Sunday. It's right and wrong. It's Saturday. You know, it says Friday evening to Saturday evening. You know, I think. But regardless of that, whatever day you have to rest is your day for rest. You provide for your family, you work, you do your things, and then you rest on a day, and you take that day for reverence for God. That's it. Like this says right here that freedom from human rules. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink, or with regard of a religious festival or a new moon celebration or a Sabbath day. These are the shadows of things that were to come. The reality, however, is found in Christ. Do not let anyone who delights in false humility, and the worship of angels disqualify you. Such a person also goes into great detail about what they have seen. They are puffed up with idle notions of their unspiritual mind. They have lost connection with the head, from whom the whole body, supported and held together by its ligaments, is grown as God causes it to grow. Okay, so this is talking about the people who preach from the Bible or from other things and tell you that this is what you need. When he says they're held together by the bones and ligaments, that's part of the body. So what they're using, right, is they're using pieces and strands from this Bible and this book. But so it's gonna lead you somewhere into like a kind of righteousness, but it's not. It's just when you nitpick like that, you're dealing with a corpse. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing alive there. There's no spirit that really lives in that, you know? And so this is it's you gotta understand that for you to, when you're gonna be so much more powerful when if you can get from under this law, because you need grace to operate efficiently so you can preach grace to other people. And your sense of law gets so much more expounded upon, because now man, it's so much more relatable, you know, like God's dealing with you, and you know, and now sin is a whole nother category if you want to get into that. I mean, there's a designated, like, there is sin in God's eyes, you know what I'm saying? But now sin is missing the mark. So now, instead of it just being this law that he gave to a nation, it's now some of these laws aren't going to be changed. Some murder, homosexuality, none of that's going to be changed. But like, you can eat what you want. You know what I'm saying? You can live more liberally than you did before. It's available to you because of the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, and you and your reverence for Him. You will know the love of God so much more than you do now. Because once you learn that grace, it's just like, you ain't no turning back, ain't no going back to nothing else that you ever knew. Because now when you under that grace, it's like that's my Jesus. You know what I'm saying? That's like you've arrested what has arrested you. You know, like he pulled me out. You know what I'm saying? When I was messing up, and now it's just like I can't give that up. It won't happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's that real. So yeah, that's really what I wanted to harp on today. I got some more, but 15 minutes. All right. Shalom.